I'm okay with just making my rate, making my markups, getting paid for my time. That's the way that I want to work my projects, whether I'm doing 10 projects at a time or whether I'm doing one project at a time. I want my business to be a direct reimbursement for the costs and the time that go into that. And that's not really exchanging time for money, right? You could scale this, but I want everyone to get paid the effort that they put in. And this is where transparency comes in. I can't do that if I don't develop a transparent budget, a transparent schedule, and a transparent scope of work and deliver that to my customers. I have nothing to go off of. I still only have one headphone that's working. Um, for some reason, my right one stopped working. I don't know. It worked a couple of weeks ago, and then it just stopped. But I'm rolling with it. I'm not slowing down. I did order a new headset, but it has not come yet. So I'm rolling with the single earbud. I feel like I'm a DJ right now. Although you guys are just listening to this, you can watch us on my YouTube channel, TRG Home Concept. So if you have not, you can watch all of these recordings on there. So go check that out. Doug has been helping me out and uploading them to my YouTube channel. What else do we have going on here? Oh, um, let's see. Phillies made the postseason. I'm super pumped about that. If you guys don't know, I am a big baseball fan for quite a few years now. Um, they made it in as a wild card. They're playing the Marlins tonight, 3-game series. Pretty pumped for that. Postseason baseball is always one of my favorite times of the year. So by the time you guys are hearing this, they would have already played game one. So wish them luck. I'm excited to watch the Phils play. I'm excited to have a fun October in playoff baseball. Hopefully they make another deep run this year. Last year was amazing, and I'm hoping this year is a little bit better. um, we have softball going on in our house. We were at a game last night. I feel like things are different nowadays. Rachel and I struggle all the time with how much time we have between work and the kids, extracurriculars. Even this morning, she rushed out of the house early, dropping the kids off at club. Tilly does an art club. Subby's doing some sort of music club, and then school, homework, dinner whenever we can squeeze it in. Obviously, Rachel and my own job, podcast, dirt bike club, softball. Tilly's doing cheer, Girl Scouts. It just seems nonstop. Like we were at the fields last night until 8 o'clock over in Morristown, and then had to drive home. So I didn't get home till 8:30. Rachel had to drop her mom home after that. Got home after 9. Selby hadn't showered for school the next day. By the time we got Tilly upstairs, it was 9:30. Selby gets home at 9:30, has to get ready for bed, get cleaned up. It's 10:30 by the time we go to sleep. And I don't remember it being like that when we were kids. Maybe we just played one sport. Maybe it wasn't quite as hectic. Maybe the days were longer. I don't know. Maybe it was just me being a kid. But my parents had 5 kids, and we all played sports. And I don't know how the hell they did it because we have 2 kids, and getting home at 8:30 at night and nobody eating dinner and not having time to. I mean, my mom didn't work, so that probably, the cost of living was a lot different. So maybe that played a big role in that, but it's really, really difficult to be able to work, both parents working, multiple sports, multiple clubs. It just seems like every week there's not enough time and we're getting home and the girls are up late. Like I remember going to bed. My parents had us in bed by like 8, 9 o'clock at the latest. We had to have our homework as soon as we got home from school. It just it seems an impossibility now. I saw somebody post something on Instagram where they were like, essentially, fuck homework. Um, and like as a student, I said that, but as a parent, I'm saying that too. Um, they basically said, you have my kids for 6 to 8 hours a day, and your job is to teach them. And if you can't get done what you need to in those 6 to 8 hours, do not send them home and expect us to do that. Like, take care of what you need to in the 6 to 8 hours at school while you have my kid, and that should be sufficient, right? Our kids are going to grow up, they're going to get jobs, uh, hopefully be responsible, contributing members to society. And is the work after school, them stressing out, doing it late before bed, getting up early to do it, staying up to read, is that really creating the right environment and the right mental health state for our kids and for our parents with everything else that's going on nowadays? Can't we just like get done what we have to in school for those 8 hours, and then when they get home from school, have it be family time and sports time and extracurriculars and shit that doesn't pertain to school? Like, do we have to make it 9 to 10 hours of school a day? Isn't 8 sufficient? Especially knowing now that when you get done high school and you get done college, you don't use any of that shit. Um, I don't know. I feel like it's silly, and it puts a lot of pressure on them with everything else. And honestly, it puts a lot of pressure on the adults, because your kids a lot of time need help. So it's sitting down while you're trying to eat dinner, taking away from family time, or after sports, or getting up early with them to try and get schoolwork done. And it's like, holy shit! Like, how is this bettering my daughters right now? Maybe that's just me. I'd like to hear how you guys think, but I'm feel as though I'm an advocate for fuck homework, and I was that way for 20 some years as a kid. And as an adult, as a parent, I'm pro fuck homework. That's enough of that. We had a softball game last night. Selby did really well. Double play, a couple of line drive outs, pop fly outs. She's playing shortstop and second base. Couple of good throws across the infield to first. She hit a triple. She smoked the ball to the gap in the outfield. Probably her hardest hit in a game ever. She was 2 for 3 at the plate. Really good game for her. I was proud of her. It was fun. We did lose the game, but it was fun. It was the best I've seen her play in a while. She just engaged and had some energy. Another thing, like so last night we were at this game. We ended at 8 o'clock. The girls are beat at that point. They're up, at 6 something in the morning, and they're playing a softball game till 8 o'clock at night, and then come home, do homework. But when we left the field it was after 8, maybe 8:15. There was another team or two teams that were going to play a game after. And like there's in basically the games are hour and a half to 2 hour. So they have girls, and at this point, maybe these were 12, 13-year-old girls, but they're going to play a softball game from 8 until 10, 8:30 till 10, 10:30 at night. I just feel like that's insane. And it's because there's no time for anything in life anymore. With both parents working, how expensive things are, and the fact that we have 11, 12, 13-year-old girls and young boys out playing baseball games till 10:30 on a Monday night, and parents having to do that and schlep these kids around, to me is insane. They're not 18 years old, 20 years old, where they're getting themselves to these games, and they're doing it because it's just what they want to be doing right now. Like, I, I didn't sign I didn't sign them up to be out until 10 o'clock at night playing travel softball. And I would be fine with it if, there wasn't so much stress and angst created by the schoolwork and the extracurriculars, and both parents working, and the cost of living nowadays. It's just a lot. But that's not why you guys are here. So thank you for you guys who are here. Um, it's always appreciated. Definitely grateful to have you guys listening. I appreciate all the support. I appreciate the reposts. I've gotten a handful of emails lately from you guys saying just thanks. Even my last blog post and podcast that I recorded about starting my business. A lot of people saying that they could relate to that. it was fun to take a trip back down memory lane and think about the first years in business. You forget a lot of the stress and the the anxiety and the sleepless nights, and I can look back on it now and laugh, but in the moment, in the time, definitely tough. But a lot of people can relate to that, and I got a handful of emails of people saying they can relate to that. So thanks for the emails. If I didn't get back to your email, I'll work on it. Sometimes they fall by the wayside. There's a lot going on in work, business, life. As the kids get older, it's a lot tougher, which is how I started this podcast. But I do thank you guys for reaching out. I've had a handful of consulting calls lately, with stemming from topics from the midweek. Um, so thank you to them. That's nice to be able to put a couple of them in on Tuesdays, during my podcast prep days. Hop on a phone call. I had another one this morning at 9, with a guy named Kevin Arnold out of Ohio, talking about business. So that's where my podcast is actually going today, not the consulting calls, but a lot of, so there's been probably at least half a dozen calls in the past few weeks, just business related calls. And whatever the topic is, whether it's pre-construction, whether it's budgeting, estimating, um, interacting with customers, fostering leads, right? So you get a lead that comes across your plate, and like how to vet that lead, and then how to nurture that lead to wind up into a sale. And I realized that like all of these conversations, they start somewhere, and there's a bunch of different directions that it takes, but then they're always circling back to one consistent topic. And that for me winds up being transparency. And that's transparency to budget, to schedule, to cost, to subs, vendors, everything is just full transparency with business. And this isn't the way that I always was. So when I first went into business, it was lump sum, give numbers, you're not breaking it apart. Everyone doesn't need to see your number. I even like my pre-construction process was morphed and adapted from an article that I read in JLC. And the big thing with the article was to send one big number. It's not an a la carte menu. You don't want customers going and picking what they can do, what they can't do, or then doing certain work themselves. And I realized a couple of years ago that like is not the best move. Um, and I used it, and I would always hide my numbers, and I didn't want people to know. And I realized that it's really, really hard to estimate a job, especially a remodel. We're not dealing with new construction. I mean, it's hard to estimate new construction, but it's the you're not dealing with existing conditions and working around existing conditions and things that have already been done to a house. So yeah, there's some changes, and there are some unforeseens, but a lot of times, when it comes to site work and stuff, that's different. But when you get a house going, a lot of times you're starting from square one. It's all fresh. So you're not dealing with peeling back before you start, or tying into existing. So um, I realized that it's really hard to guess how long something's going to take. And I had this conversation with Kevin today where he was trying to figure out how to have the conversation with customers that if his preliminary budgeting doesn't line up with what his post pre-construction budgeting is, right? So you give them this ballpark napkin number, then you come back with pre-construction, and that's a bigger number than your ballpark. And how do you have that conversation? He said when once the work starts, you can prove, hey, this is why it's more. But what about like from preliminary, to pre-construction contractual number? Like customers get upset when that's a lot bigger. And I just told him that you have to have the conversation with customers that you're guessing. We're making this shit up. It's not new construction. I mean, even in new construction, you're still guessing. Like your linear foot, they're all made on historical data. No two houses are the same. We're not putting up kit homes, box homes. It's not every single lot's not the same. Especially remodeling, you're guessing. And I said to him, like, you have to start that conversation with your customers right off the bat. And I asked him, like, "How long would it take you from where you live to go to the grocery store?" And I start thinking, right? You start thinking, all right, so it's 5 minutes to drive there, assuming no traffic. But what if there's traffic? Is it going to be 7 minutes? Is it going to be 9 minutes? What if you hit every light? What if a school bus? Like, it changes just getting there, right? And then you get there. What if there's lines when you go to check out? What if they they were reloading the eggs that you needed, right? And the eggs were expired and they're switching them out. You have to wait 5 minutes for new eggs to come out. Or the deli line. You need lunch meat for the kids, and the deli line is just super long. You're like 20 tickets back. Um, right. This shopping trip to a grocery store that's 5 to 10 minutes away could be 25 minutes, it could be 45 minutes. It could be an hour and a half, depending on how things go. Traffic there, traffic back, where your parking spot is, how many carts are there, if how efficiently you go through the store, if they have what you need, if you have to substitute things, if you forget something, if your list is accurate, right? That's one trip to the grocery store. Now think about building an addition or remodeling a house that's 12 weeks long, 16 weeks long, 6 months long, a year long. Like, you can't even guess how long it's going to take you as a customer to go to the grocery store and get what's on your grocery list. And you expect me to be able to estimate how long it's going to peel apart your house and then put it back together. Like, it's an impossibility. Um, and I realized that for years, like, the profitability, oh, my camera's all sideways. The profitability is based on luck. Excuse me, real quickly. If I had jobs where I was very profitable, I probably made more than I deserved, generally shorter jobs, few and far between. The jobs that I bid perfectly, just right, also few and far between. Um, the jobs that I grossly underestimated how much time and effort was going to go into it, more often than not, right? You have this big number that you send to somebody. You're not really tracking your costs. You don't have a detailed schedule. You don't have a detailed budget breakdown. You're not tracking all of your costs every single day and then invoicing based off these costs, right? So you're not looking at your numbers every 2 weeks to see where you want it to be, where you are, what the original scope was, how the scope has changed, um, and then what you can do moving forward. And you're not assessing that every 2 weeks. You're not managing that every 2 weeks. You're just like, hey, draw four is in 3 weeks. I know I'm behind schedule. I got to get to draw four. So I'm going to put more time in because I'm out of money. Right. And then you're a little bit more behind going into draw five. So it's the same thing. And you're like, I don't know how far I am behind schedule. I don't know how much electrical costs more, but I know that when he billed me, it was more than I thought. And I really don't have any money left on this job now. And I'm pinching pennies and I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul. So I got to hurry up and get to draw five. And then by the end of the job, you're like, I'm looking at what I'm going to be paying out the subs, how much time I have left on the job, what that's going to cost me in employee help. And then I'm like, this job's costing me money. So then I stay late. I work after hours. I send people home. I work longer days. Um, and it's not a healthy way of living a life. It's not a healthy way of having a business. So I just I came to the realization that remodel work, you're guessing. Um, I'm making an educated guess based on the information that I have, based on past experience, and based on a lot of assumptions. And so are my subcontractors. And at the end of the day, I want to be fair. I want to be fair to my customers. I don't want to over budget for something and I don't want to under budget for something. I just want to be as accurate as possible. Sorry, my watch is dinging. Um, I want to be as accurate as possible. And at the end of the day, I said 15 years ago um, that I wanted to work hard and I wanted to get paid for it. And 15 years later, I stand by that. There's probably more lucrative ways of managing a business. That I can make more money doing other things, focusing less on quality, looking more on volume, letting certain things slide, being less detail oriented. I could, but I'm okay with just making my rate, making my markups, getting paid for my time. And that's the way that I want to work my projects. Whether I'm doing 10 projects at a time or whether I'm doing one project at a time, I want my business to be a direct reimbursement for the costs and the time that go into that. And that's not really exchanging time for money, right? You could scale this, but I want everyone to get paid the effort that they put in. And this is where transparency comes in. I can't do that if I don't develop a transparent budget, a transparent schedule, and a transparent scope of work and deliver that to my customers. I have nothing to go off of. So if I have a just generalized scope of work, for example, my electrician, if the scope of work in the kitchen is 14 new receptacles, and this is just made up, it's just simple. Um, and the designers come in and say, you know what, we want to put two more receptacles in that cabinet, and then we want to put two more over there, um, over on the other side of the room or in the closet because they want to be able to charge their vacuum, right? I have four additional receptacles. Most jobs, my I would eat that cost. So if my electrician charged me $150 per receptacle, that's $600 that I'm paying. Why am I paying for that? Because I didn't properly convey how many receptacles we were installing. Say we cut a bunch from the scope and I only install 10. My customers would want to be credited for those four receptacles. If I charge them for 14 and we only install 10, in my opinion, that's not right of me. But also, they would say, hey, we didn't install all those receptacles. Can I have them back? Can I get that money back? Right? I paid for them, but I didn't get them. So why would I install four extra and not get paid for them? Why would my electrician install four extra and not get paid for them? So if I know that I quoted 14 receptacles and I have a line item budget for 14 receptacles and I'm getting reimbursed for whatever amount of receptacles I put in, if I put in 10, I'm charging for 10. If I put in 14, I'm charging for 14. If I put in 18, I'm charging for 18. That's what my customers are paying for. If the designers come in and say, we want four additional receptacles, let's put them in. Did you talk to the customers about the added cost of that? No. How much is it going to be? $150 per receptacle plus 35% markup on my end. Okay, so that's $600 plus a 35% markup. Let's call it let's call it a grand. I'm not doing the math in my head. It's probably like 800 some dollars. I can then go to the customer and say, "Hey, the scope of work initially was 14 receptacles. Designers think four more is really going to make this area work so much better. You're going to be able to have charging in the cabinets for appliances. You're also going to be able to charge in the closet for your vacuums and your Dyson and everything else. How much is that going to cost? $850. That includes my markup. Okay, we're good with that. Or you know what? We're a little bit tight. What can we do on the back end of things? Well, we could pull this out of the scope, or you know what? Instead of redoing all the switches to white in the rest of the house, we can do that at a later time, or we can not paint this one room or whatever if we're that tight. There's bigger scenarios where you have to consider this more, and it really makes a bigger impact. But if I didn't have a defined amount of receptacles from my electrician, and it's just electrical 10 grand, and then they come in and I say, and my electrician said, oh, it's 10.6. I don't really have a leg to stand on with my customers because I'm going to be like, well, why was it 10.6? And be like, my customer didn't account for that many receptacles. Well, why not? We thought that you were going to. You should have known. And maybe they pay it. Maybe you don't have a leg to stand on. Maybe they don't pay it. Like, to me, it's not worth the conversation. You want 18 receptacles, you pay my electrician for 18 receptacles. End of story. If you don't want 18 receptacles, then you don't pay for them. If you want 14, you want 10, whatever it is, but you're just going to reimburse us for those costs. I don't want more. I don't want less. I just want the costs. If I work on your project 20 days, I want to get paid for my 20 days. I don't want to get paid for 24 and I don't want to get paid for 16. To me, that is fair. That's the most fair transaction ever. Is this is the work that I put in, this is what you pay me for. You agreed to a rate, you agreed to a proposed budget, we agreed to scope, we address that every 2 weeks, we look at what that costs are, and you pay me back for my time. Same thing for anyone who's working for me, right? In my contract, my employees are going, or whoever's working for me is going to be making between $35 and $55 an hour. And here's my markup on top of that, depending on which employee's on the job. If Justin's working for me now and Justin is going to work for me 6 months from now, and I put Justin's labor rate on this job, I'm backing myself into a corner. I then, if Justin leaves, I have to find somebody that's a exact labor rate. I could find somebody who's less, and then I'm making more money on that job. I could be paying somebody more and then making less. So when I sign my contract, here's my labor rates. Here's how they span depending on who's working for me. Depending on who's on your job, I'm going to get different productivity out of different people, and there's going to be different costs associated with that. You're just going to reimburse me for whatever hours they work and my markup on them to cover insurances, workers comp, and my profit on them. Right? It's clearly defined, and you're signing a contract based on a budget around those numbers. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less, but I'm invoicing people every 2 weeks so we can look at what those numbers are like, right? If I thought that Justin was going to be on a job and he was more efficient than somebody else and I'm paying him more money, um and I don't have quite that productivity and we're 6 weeks into a job, maybe I paid my employee less, but I'm not as far along in the schedule. If I didn't have a clearly defined schedule, a clearly defined scope of work, and I weren't budgeted for and clearly tracking the costs of this employee, and I can't say, hey, we thought we were going to be here. Now we're here. This is how far into the project we are. And I can't cross reference all of those numbers every 2 weeks. I don't know what sort of money I'm making. I don't know where I should be in the project. And I don't know what I'm charging or if I'm making money. I'm just working and billing because it's like, I got to catch up. I got to catch up. I'm looking at my bank account. At this point now, I know if Justin's working every 2 weeks that he's sending me his hours and I'm paying him directly for what he worked. My customers are paying for what he worked plus the markup that goes to me. They're just reimbursing me for those costs. So if Justin doesn't work 80 hours in 2 weeks, they don't pay that, right? If Justin works 100 hours in 2 weeks and we discuss that with the customers, they pay that. If Justin doesn't work any hours in 2 weeks, they don't pay that. That's very fair to me. And every 2 weeks, we can look at where the job stands, what the costs are, where we expect it to be in schedule, what changes there were, if we're under budget, if we're over budget, if we're on schedule, if there's changes that we should make. And I engage my customers, I engage the designers, and I say, hey, this is where we are. You know, on my current project, early on, we ran into some simple changes. And I said, right now, we're about $14,000 over budget, and we're probably a week and a half to 2 weeks behind. Is there anything that you want to change moving forward? Do we want to possibly not refinish all the floors? Is it too early on? Maybe, hey, how about we go another 4 weeks, see where we stand, then make a decision on this, because we can always adjust scope at the end of the project. um, we ended up running into a ton more issues. So as those issues came up every 2 weeks, we reassessed what we think that's going to do. How's that going to impact the budget? How's that going to impact the schedule? What the numbers now look like, what the changes are, what the original scope was, and what the differences are. Do we need to secure more funding? Do we need to bump subs? Do we need to bump um, appliance delivery, furniture delivery? Everyone is in the loop every 2 weeks. I'm paid a retainer at the beginning of the job, and I'm paid every 2 weeks. So if I'm 13 days into a cycle of work and I don't bill until after that 14th day, that's the most risk that I have on this job. But I still have a retainer from the beginning of the job that has me paid through more than likely that 13 days. Okay. So day 14 hits, I invoice. Day one, that's the least amount of risk I have on that job because I'm paid through everything plus my full retainer. I feel safe. I feel secure. I feel as though I'm not funding a customer's renovation. If they don't feel safe and they don't feel secure directly reimbursing me for my cost and then me having a retainer for all of the money that I'm putting out on 2 week cycles, then I don't know if I want to work for them. If I hired somebody to work for me and they're like, "Hey, we think it's going to take this long. We think it's going to take 10 days. How about every 2 days we circle back? We see where we stand in 2 days, where we thought we'd be, where we are, what the cost differences are, if we're plus or minus, and then we see what we're gonna do for the next 2 days. Like, to me, that's fair. I'm not putting myself at risk, right? I'm gonna pay you every 2 days. I'm only ever at risk 2 days out plus my retainer. That's the most risk that I have as a customer, and then I'm reimbursing this person for their cost. If they don't show up for one of those 2 days, I don't have to pay them for it. If they don't show up for any of those 2 days, I don't have to pay them for it. If I don't like who they are, I can get rid of them and bring somebody else in. If I love what they're doing, I could just keep them on the books, just keep paying them, move ahead with the project. If at any point it seems like it's getting out of hand, every 2 weeks, or in this situation, every 2 days, we're sitting down and having a meeting and discussing where we stand. It never can get that far out of control that you're not aware of, that your customers aren't aware of. This for me is the most fair way to do work. Um, it has created a mental state for me that is it's I'm far less anxious. It's far more stable. I understand, right? If there's a delay in the schedule and I can't work for 2 weeks, I understood that the 6 weeks leading up to that, I did not concede any of my time. I didn't underbid something. I didn't leave money on the table. I'm okay. I know that with what my rate and what I make and what I'm paid for, that I'm paid up through that time and that I made money. I'm not behind the 8 ball. I'm not always trying to work from behind, always feeling that I'm underneath the job. If something slows down and I have to get engineering and I have to bump around, that's okay. I have the conversation with the customer. They know where we stand with schedule. I can say, hey, we were 6 days ahead of schedule according to where I wanted to be on the calendar today. This is going to put us another 9 days behind. So we're going to be 15 days behind schedule at this point. That's 3 work weeks. Um, there's things maybe on the back end that we can overlap to maybe make some headway, but let's see in 2 more weeks. Let's see where we stand. Maybe we made up a day or 2. Maybe there's nothing to do. Maybe you're okay with that. Um, but it never gets 2 weeks out of control. That makes me feel amazing. That makes my customers feel amazing. And to me, this is the way that I want to do business. I started implementing this a couple years ago. This recent job has been the biggest affirmation of that and proof of concept for me. I could be completely underwater and behind the 8 ball on this project, differentiating and distinguishing between what was contracted work, what was additional work, where I'm paid for, what I'm invoicing, how far behind schedule I am. I'm very overwhelmed with this project, but I'm not overwhelmed financially. I'm not overwhelmed as far as where do we stand on this project? How much above scope are we? How much above contract cost are we? How far behind schedule are we? I know that within 2 weeks at any given time. So if this is a 5-month project that was supposed to be a 3-month project, I am fully aware of that within 13 days of where we stand in either direction, right? So in another 14 days and maybe 3, I can reassess. I can meet with the designers, I can meet with the customer, I can look and see what we stand, where we stand, and then make a judgment call at that point. I don't have to make a judgment call for 2 months down the road because I don't know what's going to happen 2 months down the road. I can account for that and I can plan for that. But let's see what happens in 2 weeks. We'll see where we are financially. We see where we are from a schedule perspective, from a scope perspective, if we made up any time, if we lost time, and then we'll address that at that point and we can make a decision. But we're biting off small chunks. Everyone feels comfortable. There's trust. Um, everyone's paid. My subs are paid. I'm not financing a renovation for a customer. And this has done wonders for my mental health. This has done wonders for my business health. Again, I could do more work if I wanted to, but I understand I'm making money now. I know when I'm working, I'm making money. I know what my markups are. So do my customers. I know what material costs are. So do my customers. They pay me for them. I track all of these costs. They're just reimbursing me for them. I'm not asking for more. I'm not asking for less. I'm very fair. If I put in 9 hours because I want to put in 9 hours and I don't feel like it's like an equitable transaction for my customer, I'm not going to charge them for 9 hours. Like, I stayed late and I wanted to sort my head around things. I had a few phone calls. I didn't feel as I was productive as I wanted to be today. So that's going to be 8 hours. Like, I'm rarely charging people more than 8 hours in a day, even if I work nine, if I work eight and a half, because in my opinion, I'm making my rate. I'm making my day rate. I'm making I know exactly what I'm making. I know I'm not leaving money on the table. My customers have trusted me in signing up with this model. So I'm not going to nickel and dime them if I work 8.5 hours. Like, I'm good. Most other jobs, I'd only be getting paid for like 4 because I underbid it. So I'm getting paid for a day, whether I'm there for 9 hours, 9.5 hours. Like, I'm not going to nickel and dime them for those costs because I know that I'm making a fair living, and I feel as though they're trusting me and they're investing in my system and investing in my business, and that's the least that I could do for them. I know that I'm making more of a fair rate than I ever have before, and that they're agreeing to this, which may not be a standard exercise or business practice within our industry. So I'm going to be fair to them, right? If I make a mistake, I'm not going to charge them for more materials. I'm not going to charge them for the time it took to fix it. I'll charge them for 6 hours in a day, for 7 hours in a day, whatever it is. If I was there for 8 and I don't feel like I got 8 hours worth of work done, I will charge them less because that's what's fair. And they see that, and that helps me maintain schedule. That helps me stay on budget, and it to me is the best way for me to do business. And I wanted to share this with everyone because I wouldn't be able to do this without transparency. I wouldn't be able to do this without showing my customers every single cost associated with their project going into it. I wouldn't be able to do this without having a clearly comprehensive, defined, detailed scope of work. For my electrician sent me a number for my last job. Oh, I think it's going to be 10 grand for the kitchen. That's not good enough. I need a breakdown of everything we're putting into this kitchen. Even if there's not a scope, write a scope. Develop a scope for me and price that. Because when it changes or when it's not the same as that, we then have something to back up against. If you tell me it's 10 grand for the kitchen and I don't have any defined scope, I have nothing to back up against. I've not If it was twice as much and you're like, it's twice as much as I thought. Well, I don't know what you priced with your 10 grand. I have nothing that I can go to the customer with and just say, hey, it's more, right? So even if there's no scope, make up a scope. Make up something that feels accurate and that's going to get you in the ballpark, and that's what we're going to bid. And if you're unsure of it, I'll have the conversation when I submit that with my customer. Here's our electrical number, no real scope yet. This is what we're thinking. It's going to be this amount of receptacles, this amount of three ways, this many hi-hats, this many appliances, this many home runs, this amount of floor heat. All of that is compensated for. And then we have a leg to stand on. If we use more or we use less or we go over, we know. We know exactly what the differences are, and we're only charging for that. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less, but it's fair. It's a reimbursement. It's a little more paperwork on my end, but it's fine. I'd rather do that than lose money. Um, so I wanted to get this out there. I wanted you guys to hear this because seriously, at least a half dozen of my calls in the past few weeks have all came back to this model, um, to how I'm looking at things, how I want to operate my business. And this isn't the standard, especially in smaller projects. Even in a more middle of the line market, not a super high end market, not a cost plus market. This is something that I've integrated and that I feel can be implemented for any size of your business, as long as it's spelled out beforehand and that's what your customers are signing up for and you're fair. It for me is it's a really, really good model. If you guys and girls are more interested in learning more about the specifics of this, I can't get into that. Um, with everyone on this podcast. But you can shoot me an email. We can hop on a phone call. There's so many small little details and nuances and um, I guess systems that I've created within this. And there's so many different levels of integration with all of these within the entire process that my head would spin trying to go into everything. So if you have more specific questions, or how I implement this, or what this looks like from a billing perspective, from a proposal perspective, how I'm tracking my costs, um, how I'm determining my costs, all of that stuff, shoot me an email. We can hop on a phone call. We can get something scheduled. Again, I don't have that Square app on my Instagram anymore. I'm doing most of my consulting calls on Tuesday. But if you want to talk about this and you're interested, and you want to make some money for your business and not feel that you're always behind the eight ball and you're working backwards, definitely shoot me an email, Tyler at homeconcepts.com. And we can schedule something for a Tuesday. I'm usually scheduling things 1-2 weeks out, limited availability. I don't like to schedule things too far out because I don't know what happens week to week if something's coming up. So I can usually plan for 1-2 weeks in advance without feeling too overwhelmed. So if you're interested in hearing more about this, definitely shoot me an email. It's been great to hop on these calls with people. And I truly feel as though I'm helping people not only transform their business, but their lives. And it's such a simple idea and simple concept. And it's fair. Like, it's fair for everyone. It's fair for your customers. It's fair for you. And maybe you don't need to integrate this entire system. But there's certain aspects of it that you can implement that will help you out a lot. And maybe I can share them with you. Um, I think that it'll be helpful for you guys. Um, As always, I appreciate you guys listening along. I appreciate all the support, the emails, the feedback. It's been great. I've really enjoyed doing this. I've enjoyed all of these phone calls. There's been a decent resurgence of them. I had stopped doing them for a minute, and I've gotten back into them and made some time on Tuesdays to do this, to try and help as many people as I can. And it's been great. The feedback's been great. Been doing a bunch of return customers or return clients for consults as well, just digging into things. And it's pretty amazing to see how much we can get across in an hour, even right now. How long did I talk in the beginning about BS, and then really what I feel is valuable information? I'm only 40 minutes into this podcast now, so there's a lot that we can get into in an hour. I want to also thank my buddies over at Kuiken Brothers. That's Kuiken. Um, uh, I hooked up with Ryan, Ryan Mulkeen up there, probably it's going on 8-10 years ago at this point, with their product expo that they put on. I remember going up there years ago. Actually, my wife had a blog that she wrote, an interiors blog, and I think Ryan invited her up, and we went up and we saw Brent Hull speak. But that's how I was introduced to Kuiken Brothers. And I really like Ryan. We've developed a relationship. He has supported me, all of my ventures, all of my endeavors over the years. And I really value his insight and his knowledge and his background and what he's done for me. And as a company, they have always helped me out. I'm not a huge contractor. I don't do a ton of work, but they've always been willing to answer my questions, get me moldings when I need them, ship stuff UPS in shorter lengths if I need it, even for a fireplace build, right? They're up in North Jersey, and he's gotten their team to ship me lengths of moldings UPS so I can get them quickly, so that I can integrate some nice molding profiles. But they do ship their moldings nationwide. If you are anywhere in like the tri-state region, they have 9 locations: Fairlawn, Emerson, Midland Park, Newark, Roseland, Succassana, Wantage, I think. I'm from New Jersey, and I don't even know how to say that. Warwick, New York. You can check out, let's see where they have. So they have a bunch of Andersen displays as well. So if you want to see some of Andersen's big doors, windows, you can check them out there. Midland Park, showroom. Let me confirm that. Bifold. All right. So the bifold and lift and slide doors at Midland Park. That's where you're gonna want to go to see that. They carry their molding lines in the rest of their locations, so you can see all of their architecturally detailed moldings. I am a huge fan of their moldings. I'm a huge fan of the finger jointed poplar. These are some nice casings um, that you can throw around some dope Andersen doors or windows. But realistically, so the job we're on now, I'm using some lesser quality pine finger jointed moldings. And while they are super easy to cut on a saw, they are super easy to cope. They are light, they are flimsy. The molding profiles are not super deep. They're not milled very well, and they don't have those deep shadow lines and the bold, sharp, crisp lines of the Kuiken Brothers Classical Moulding collection. So check them out. Again, they are a huge Andersen dealer. So if you have questions, Andersen Windows Doors, you want to see them in person, you can head to Midland Park for those big lift and slide displays, the bifold doors. You can reach out to them, find their closest lumberyard, and check to see. I would this is an assumption, but I would assume that most of their yards will be able to help you out with standard Andersen windows and doors. If you need help, they'll put you in touch with a salesman or saleswoman who will be able to help you out with that stuff. But definitely check out their Andersen showrooms. And then for me, the moldings that they offer, honestly, um, I wish that I could I do use them on every job except for when I have to match something up. So on our current job, we're matching some existing molding. So I don't have a choice to use Kuiken, but any job where I'm integrating new moldings, their classical molding line or their modern craftsman selection is incredible, and the primed finger jointed poplar is a massive upgrade in stability and profile and contours and just more architectural detail than what most people are putting out with their pine stock molding. So check them out. I appreciate the support, Ryan and team up at Kuiken. Good friends of the Modern Craftsman podcast, good friends of TRG Home Concepts. Thank you guys all for listening. I will catch up with you next week. Enjoy the rest of your week. Go Phils!